Recording is starting now. Okie dokes.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello, everybody. And welcome to the first, maybe the first of many, the Ex-Fundie Deconstruction and Reconstruction video chat. I want to do a real quick recap of some rules of respect, even though y'all are all decent humans. So here we speak our truth, we listen to learn and grow, we respect each other's differences, and that everyone has different opinions on how the world should work, socially, politically. Everyone is coming from different fundamentalist experiences, and we therefore take the time to respect each other's opinions and work together to understand each other more and learn and grow together. And lastly, no hate speech, violence, threatening language. Goes without saying, but still I have to say it, obviously. And anyway, if anyone did say any of those things or if that started out, I would just boot them from the call. So hopefully everyone can feel safe and secure. Anyway, thank you all for coming today. And I intend to take notes during this discussion so we can put our energy towards some suggestions to make the world a better place for our little sphere and hopefully eventually the whole thing. So before we get started, why don't we go around and say our name and pronoun? And if you want to share how you came to deconstruction in some way, religious or fundamentalist situation, and answer the question of the day, which is very silly, which is if you could have any magical steed, what would it be?
Magical steed?
Magical steed. Because I know we're all nerds, okay? All right. I'll start really quickly. My name is Chris. My pronouns are he or they, he, him, or they, them. I came from deconstructing my fundamentalist, I don't even know the right word for it, culture, I guess, from being raised in a family that was, if y'all are familiar, like the Quiverful movement and homeschoolers, Texas, Deep South, all that kind of stuff, like purity culture and like courtship culture and all that stuff. And then I came to, we had very, very limited access to the outside world, like internet and things like that, media. So I came to kind of leaving that situation. And we were Christian. I don't know if I mentioned that, but yeah, very Christian and very fundamentalist. And then I came to leaving that through my younger sister leaving home before me, and then getting a taste of the outside world and breadcrumb coaxing me like 3 years later to I was already gay, queer, whatever, in my situation, and she kind of already knew that, so she was like, "There's a world outside for you. You can come." So yeah, then like 3 or 4 years later, I stumbled my way to following her, and then was like hit with, all the awakenings. I'm sure a lot of you have these can relate, but first you start being like, religion, and then you're like, being gay, and then you're like, gender. Wait a second, I left, so I feel like I was leaving so many cults. It was just, I'm going to leave all the cults, and then I was like, wait, capitalism, you just keep going down the rabbit hole, and you're like, it's all the cults, but here we are. But now after you deconstruct, now I'm like, where are we now? We gotta reconstruct. But yeah, that's me. And my magical steed would be a dragonfly because I love bugs. On to, I guess we can go I'm not alphabetically first, so I don't know why we go alphabetical order, but besides me, we can go alphabetically. Ashley. Or maybe I shouldn't say Ashley, sorry. Ashley's iPhone.
No, you're good. I can you hear me at all? I can't tell if my mic's on.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So my name's Ash. My pronouns are they, them, and she, her. I grew up in kind of a similar situation to you, where I grew up quiverful. I don't know if you're aware of the IBLP movement, but my family was kind of associated with that. And then I left that world after kind of realizing a bunch of stuff and meeting my partner. So then I've been deconstructing. That was 4 years ago now. So I've been deconstructing and kind of figuring out my whole deal. And yeah, I don't know what a magical steed is. You're gonna have to tell me. I'm not.
Like, you know, a unicorn, it's something you could ride, right? So like
Oh.
a unicorn or a dragon are like some of the main ones that come to mind, but I just said dragonfly because I'm extra.
Okay. Maybe a salamander.
Ooh, I like that.
That's the best thing I've ever heard.
I don't use your Zoom name, but the person who just said that's the best thing I ever heard, do you want to go next?
I would rather go last, actually. Is that okay?
Yeah. Ash, do you want to popcorn it to someone else?
Yeah. Here, let me see who's here. How about Quinn?
Okay. Hello, my name is Quinn. Pronouns they, them, and only they, them. I'm still working on my deconstruction. We're in progress. It's an experience, let me tell you. Mostly started because I went to secular college after being raised super secular college. After being raised just like, yeah, super homeschool fundy purity culture, not quite so much quiverful, but it was definitely an undertone. Because I was raised in like the non-denominational, so it was, you know, less whatever, quote unquote.
I know exactly what you mean.
So I'm still working on mine and just kind of figuring out everything. My magical steed would probably, I'd probably just be either a pegacorn or a dragon because I'm basic.
Ooh. Oh, that's so cool.
Oh yeah.
Hey, there's a reason those are classics. There's a mwah.
I have a tiny dragon somewhere around here, but
My gecko thinks he's a tiny dragon, so
you should get him little costume wings.
I have thought of this. I think it'd be adorable.
Do it.
I have a tiny dinosaur.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Found it
How
on
are you
the
going to fit on that? That's your magical steed.
Well, that's not going to be my steed, but
Oh,
I
okay.
thought I would contribute that to the conversation.
Quinn, do you want to popcorn it to someone?
Sure. Go ahead, Bree.
All right, so I'm Bree or Brianna. I kind of go by either. I came from, it's like kind of a combination of like the non-denominational.
Sorry to interrupt. Bree, do you mind sharing your pronouns? Is that cool?
Oh yeah, she, her.
It's okay if you don't want to share pronouns either, but like mention it.
Yeah. Kind of like a mix of like Pentecostal, but then also like non-denominational, like mega church, kind of sort of moderate-ish evangelical, kind of a mix because there were two different churches that I went to growing up. And then for me, it was all about what started things had to do with gender roles. Gender roles were something that I really like struggled with, I guess you could say, where there's a certain kind of I would consider it kind of moderate in the sense that there was this attitude that you could go and do any career you wanted, but there was still an attitude that within a church and within a marriage situation, there were certain kind of roles that men and women were supposed to have. And I didn't like it. And I was trying to, trying to make sense of that. And then eventually I just got to this point where I was like, you know what, this is messed up and I'm not going to accept anything that offends my sense of dignity. And if that means the Bible's wrong, then the Bible's wrong. And so that was like this huge shift. And then I just started questioning thing after thing after thing. And I did it way too fast. I think it would be better to like have a slow deconstruction. I like went like fast into it and it was very overwhelming and way more than my brain could handle and very terrifying. But that's just, I guess, how I do things. So, and then I would say my steed, my magical steed, I would probably have to say dragon, but I also am very partial to griffins. So just something that can fly and something that looks beautiful and is cool. So that would be my standards. Those would be my two favorites that fit those criteria.
Coolness is the standard by which we measure all fantasy. So,
They're gonna say everything, but that
well,
also true.
the aesthetic.
Yes. And the thing about griffins and dragons is that they both have a little bit of the sense of the cat to them. I mean, griffins obviously have a lot more, but dragons do too. It's depending on the type of dragon. I guess that's more of a Chinese dragon than like a European dragon, but there is still a sort of cat-like element to like some of their behavior and stuff, I feel like. I like cats. So.
Same. I've got one snoozing behind me right now, but she just looks like a black.
No, sorry.
Hippie.
I guess I'll throw it to Hal.
Yes, so my name on here is sketchy as I'll get out, but my name is Hal for the later arrivals, and my pronouns are they, them. I was raised evangelical, Lutheran Missouri Synod. So crazy strict, up and down, chanting, all the 9 yards. Homeschooled, and it wasn't until I found that I had accidentally fallen in love with my best friend that was assigned female at birth that I started kind of looking at things. And actually, it was mostly my current fiance, my partner, who did the looking because I was terrified. And so I've been doing the deconstruction for about 4 years now, or longer. And it's been a very slow, arduous, and terrifying process of realizing that everything I believed in has changed. And mostly just because I was looking into what does God say about being gay? And then I started finding a bunch of contradictions and craziness, and it changed everything. So yeah, that's where I am. And if I were to have a magical steed, probably either a hippogriff or honestly an eagle, like from Lord of the Rings.
What's a hippogriff? I don't know what this is.
Harry Potter, which was something I wasn't allowed to read.
Hey.
Anyway,
All the
That's why I don't know.
homeschoolers.
I watched the films as an adult, but like just once, so I don't like know the lore or anything. So what is it? What is it exactly?
it's kind of like a griffin. It's like the Harry Potter world version of a griffin, but it's a little bit different.
Gotcha.
Somebody help me with the description.
I don't know. I wasn't.
Horse.
It was
It's
evil. I couldn't.
worse than it's got like a horse's
I'm gonna
body.
Google it.
Yeah, there you go.
Hippogriff. I gotta see it. Oops, I didn't search it right. Oh, nice. All right. It's like it's like a griffin, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's me. Also, apologies for my screen light changing. My partner's playing Animal Crossing, and it is affecting the lighting
That's
in my
the
room.
best reason.
That's so
to possibly
valid.
have.
Right? So I'll popcorn it over to there's one on here, Brandon Russell.
Yeah, that's me. I started in kind of a weird place. My family was kind of does anybody know about Vision Forum?
Oh yes.
Yes, I was big in the
Okay.
Vision Forum.
But we were not
no
Vision
way.
Forum, but we were Vision Forum adjacent, and we were something. We belonged to something called Christian Identity, which you can look up on Wikipedia. We believed growing up that essentially the lost 10 tribes of Israel were white people.
Oh no.
People, yeah. No, this is going right into just dead ass white supremacy. We believed growing up, I believed that growing up that white people were actually descended from the real 10 tribes of Israel, and that there was a lot of anti-Semitism in there too. So like very much like Jewish people were usurpers and just horrible shit, man. I don't know where to begin on where I started, but very much like white supremacy, white people are the people of God, the chosen people. And I kind of deconstructed from that into more of like charismatic Christianity. And then I was like, oh shit, at some point, like this is the same thing. Like this is like there's the same shit going on in like, you know, Life Church and all these other kind of arenas that I'm in. And then I was like, you know, I don't believe any of this. And I kind of deconstructed further into just not believing anything. And that's where we're going from now. So
Hey.
so just, you know, just everything. Like I you know, I'm kind of right now where I'm in, I would say I've kind of redeveloped maybe a spiritual. I'm interested in I'm interested in spirituality that isn't connected to political or racial points. And I'm really into like Taoism and Buddhism and discovery. And I really hate anything, any system of belief that leads to a elevation of one kind of people over another. And that's where I'm at. So
Yeah. That's super cool. I'm also spiritual, or I'm, you know, what does that mean? But you know, I'm
oh yeah, there's something
Yeah,
out
same.
there, you know?
Yeah, a discussion
There is
topic, like what that word even
something.
means.
Yeah.
I'm
Is
into
there
the
something?
power
I
of
hope so.
confusion right now, you know? like I've had a recent experience with like craniosacral therapy where like somebody, you know, I had somebody touch my head and I released like, you know, 10 years of physical and emotional trauma. And it was something that looked like an exorcism, or that looked like, you know, from where you're coming from, it looked like an exorcism or a possession, I suppose. You know, so I've you know, recently I've become more interested in like definitely like more open to just about anything that doesn't promote
Yeah,
that doesn't
yeah.
promote one thing over another, I suppose. Anyway.
Yeah.
That's quite a process. Wow. That's a far way to come.
I'm still coming.
And that's what she said.
That was just
Do I
really
say
into
it?
that joke.
I tried. I held it in for like 3 seconds.
Same. I was like,
Amaris,
yeah.
did you want to go now? Are you in a nice, safe spot, not driving or whatever you're waiting for?
Oh, we can't hear you if you're talking.
Yeah, your
You're-
mic
you're
is
muted.
muted.
ground control to Major Tom.
There we go.
That's cool. And also, if you don't want, they probably something happened, they're not available to talk. But also, if you don't want to talk, you don't have to. But also, if you hear us and you can't make the thing work or whatever, jump in and interrupt at any point to introduce yourself.
Wait, give me a second.
Okay, yes, you're like
Here I am. Okay, did somebody let Artemis in, or are they in?
Oh wait, thank you. I did
Oops.
not see that for some reason. Now I did. Just in time. Hello.
Hello.
You're just in time. We were just going around and saying our name, our pronouns, and how we got here from where we are in our deconstruction journey, and also answering the question of the day, which is what kind of magical steed would you choose to have if you And also, I want to give a disclaimer from this and any other questions in the whole thing. If there's anyone that you do not feel comfortable answering, feel free to pass.
Okay. Has everyone else already introduced or?
Everyone except for Amaris and you.
Okay. I'm Artemis. My pronouns are they, them. You said deconstruction journey and steed.
Yes.
Where I'm at in my deconstruction journey is I'm an atheist who's like open, I guess, to the possibility of there being a higher power, if you will. And if I had a magical steed, it'd probably be like some kind of dinosaur.
Sweet dinosaur.
Yeah.
What about this one?
Hell yeah. Absolutely.
Specifically that tiny plastic one.
Okay. I don't know how I look. Okay, hi.
You look
Look
amazing.
Great.
You look fabulous.
The vibes are on point.
Fantastic.
My name is, thank you guys. First, I'm really excited I get to like be here and talk with you guys, listening to all y'all stories. It's like almost cathartic in a way. I'm just very grateful I found this space. And I really hope someday we can all meet. That'd be fun. That'd be cool. So my name is Amaris. My pronouns are she, her, and I really grew up really similar to all of y'all, like think purity culture and really just fundamentalist, like really enforced gender roles and also like highly radical, like political beliefs, like very far right and just almost scary, right? And coming out of that, several things led me. I just really didn't want to be a judgmental person. And I feel like just everything about being a Christian and a Republican, like really far in, I feel like sometimes that requires like you judge people, and just, I didn't like that. It didn't let me feel open to just loving people or accepting them how they were. There were always so many requirements for getting love or obtaining anything good in your life. And so I just really, walking away from that, it was like an unraveling of my identity and my taste and literally my perspective and worldview on everything. It just like came apart at the seams. And I actually managed to find some really good things in that area. And now I'm kind of getting to the place where I'm deciding what I want to keep in my life, like what brings me peace and happiness. And I'm just glad I get to talk to people with the same goals and experiences, because I think that's important. And my magical steed, I didn't even take time to think about this, which is really dumb. I should have thought. Since somebody brought up, I don't know if somebody brought up a Lord of the Rings creature, but I think an Ent would be so fun, like to hang out with. I feel like that'd be such a vibe. I hate that I said that, but it's a vibe.
Oh,
It's a
totally.
vibe.
As that Ent draft, can't pass it up.
Just riding a tree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Okay. Also, it's wonderful to meet everybody. I know this is funny because this is from, I put out this call on Facebook, so I know I know some of y'all. I know some of y'all just through Facebook. So that's kind of interesting to see you like in the flesh, I guess, in the moving picture versions of yourselves. And I don't actually always know how I got to be friendly with everybody, because it's probably from groups and random things. Facebook is weird, but you're all really cool, so I'm happy that you're here. So it does feel really nice, like Emma said, like to hear other people, and I do think it's really important to have other people that you can talk with that share your experience. And sometimes like the like the fundamentalist experience, especially the more nuanced you get, can be really niche and not shared with a ton of people. So I think it's even more powerful when you get to like talk to a group of people that share it with it. So my first topic for today was religion. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But my question about it is, since I'm trying to talk about in this video call, like where we are and what we're thinking, but also kind of some thoughts on like where we can go, like I said, in our sphere and then in the larger sphere, like the planet and the nation, on how to make things better for people. So my first question about religion is like, I said, does it have a place in our society? And where are we after deconstructing, and what work needs to be done in our own lives and the larger society to support people who are not part of traditional religious communities? Which I guess none of us really, maybe some of us are, but from what I understood from what y'all were saying, it doesn't sound like we're any of us part of traditional religious communities. So yeah, does religion have a place in our society, and what can we do to create those kinds of spaces for people who don't fit into traditional religious communities, including us?
Big and deep question.
That's a good question.
Well, I've been thinking about it, so I need some other minds. We got to keep brainstorming.
We do have it looks like Natasha Hammond is not able to get into the chat right now.
Not able to? Let me see real quick. I'm gonna have her request again, just because I might have missed the request when I was.
And you said that you're recording it, right?
Yes.
I feel terrible, but I have to be up at like 4:35 in the morning, and it's
Yeah.
10 here, so I may have to duck, which makes me feel terrible, but I want to be able to listen. So
Yeah, no problem.
awesome. So wherever you guys end up popping this up, the recording, because I'm technologically challenged on Zoom front. If you guys can let me know, but I'm actually gonna peace out for right now. So I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the next meeting. If there's gonna be another one, I'd really like to actually be involved. So
Wonderful.
all right,
well,
have a
good
good
luck.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
It's giving me a moment to think about the question, so this is good.
Yeah, I'm having Natasha retry to enter. I think I must have just missed it when I went to get more tea.
I feel like I can maybe start talking while we're waiting for her, because I'm having some
Yeah,
sort of
absolutely.
thoughts, and maybe they'll be full as I talk. But when I think about religion, and in terms of like a question specifically, like, does it have a place in our society? There are several things that I'm thinking about. So first of all, religion means so many things, and it's very hard for people to define what religion even is. I don't think there really is a good definition that people have come up with. They usually list a bunch of traits that all the religions tend to have. And so I feel like any of the things that you can find, like certain problems that often come from religion, you can also find other traditions that don't have those issues. It's interesting with Braden talking about some of these more Eastern religions. Like, there are a lot of things that we have with a lot of our Western religions that the Eastern religions don't have. They also have other issues that you got to deal with. But it's like, it's different things. And so when I'm looking at religion, the two things that bother me, that I think we need to be careful about and look out for, are, one, there's just, the sort of fundamentalist way of thinking, where you have, like, if you have some sort of absolute truth, if you have things that can't be questioned, if you have certain, certain ways of thinking that are just set in stone, I think that's very dangerous. Religion's not the only thing that does that. I think sometimes we do that in politics too. So I'm like, to me, I think you don't have to have that in religion, but that's something to be careful about, is like, if we're going to intentionally, practice religion, I think we should be, getting rid of those kinds of things. Like, if there's any sort of, fundamentalist attitude, like, let's get rid of that, and allow us to have sort of a flexible religion that can adapt to new evidence and stuff like that. Actually, I think that really is the main thing that is an issue, now that I'm thinking about it. The other issue would be just kind of like tribalistic things, but that kind of falls under that, because if you're able to be open and you're able to think, creatively, and you can adapt, I think you're less likely to fall into the sort of dangerous tribalistic things too. So in my personal opinion, I think there can be a healthy version of religion. And I think some of the unhealthy versions of religion can exist in other contexts too. So I don't think, in my opinion, I don't see religion as the issue. It's more like ideology, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Do you have any thoughts about like? I feel like you and I might have talked about this on it in the past before. I don't know, but do you have any thoughts around like making like spaces? Like how we can make spaces for non-traditional religious people? That's something I feel very passionately about, but curious of everyone else's ideas about it.
So I feel like religion fills a void where I think natural human law and order would have filled if everybody made the conscious choice to be a good person. I feel like capitalism also stemmed from this, and why I think almost every government system after that would be flawed is you just have to hinge on somebody else choosing what's right that day. And I think, if that makes sense, because religion provides structure where I guess the evil part of human nature would demand bad things to happen. Like, okay, rules, don't do this, do this to be a good person. It fills in where people decide to not take that personal responsibility. And I think that if people who take personal responsibility identify each other, then that's where unity and collaboration and just partnerships happen, and that's where communities are formed. So it's a really, I think everybody can agree that like community has impact. It's really powerful for good and for bad. So I think like what we're doing right now is such a key step and probably the most important part of being in a space, whether it's structured or not.
Yeah, I love that. It's kind of I love the two parts of what you said, which is like one, having that come in and be like, like human nature chaotically may just cause evil, and then setting some kind of standard, right? But then also saying like how important it is to have community, whether it's structured or not. I think those are so interesting because they almost sound opposite, but I think they are both, you can hold those both at the same time. Those are both interesting pieces.
I have a further thought on that, but I want to let someone else talk first because I just talked. But I have another comment, but I'll hold it for a second.
I'm not sure if anyone can hear me, but hi. Friend made it in.
Hello, friend. Do you want to quick, go ahead, you're probably already going to do it. I was just going to ask you, introduce yourself, names, pronouns, and stuff.
Okay, yeah. Hey, I'm Natasha. I'm they, them, non-binary. I came out about a year and a half ago, I guess. And I'm also an ex-evangelical. Not exactly an atheist. I do have spiritual beliefs, but definitely not Christianity at all. But yeah, basically me. Hi.
Hello and welcome.
Hey, welcome.
Do you want to answer the question of the day that we all answered, which was what would be your magical steed if you could pick one? That was our icebreaker question.
The magical what?
A magical steed. So relevant to the topic of this meeting.
Like any type of thing you would ride?
Anything. Yeah, it could be a dragon, it could be a horse, it could be people says a salamander. Cool.
Nice. I don't know, I guess Shadowfax from Lord of the Rings or something.
Hey.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm a nerd.
Oh, believe me, you're in good company.
Don't worry,
Oh,
someone else
yeah.
said Ent.
Heard
Nice. That's solid. Quite literally.
Or one cult closes, another one opens. So that's what my friends say. It's funny.
Nice.
Yes, we love it.
Very cool.
Thank you so much for joining us, Natasha.
Of course, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me. Sorry I was a little late.
No, you're good. We were just having our first topic for discussion was about religion and like what place does it have in our society, and also how to create spaces for non-traditional people who fit into a non-traditional religious sphere.
I like it. That's good. All right. Well, thank you for kind of catching me up.
Absolutely. And it's very free form, so feel free to jump in wherever when we're talking about it.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll probably just listen for a little bit.
Yeah, you're right.
I think I have a question. what kind of along the lines of like, I guess what religion has, what place has religion in culture? I think it sounds like a lot of you guys come from kind of the same place that I did, of being taught from a very early age that, there's a culture war, and that, that there's an active war that you have to engage in. That's like something that I've just been like thinking about a lot lately, and not really having an answer for, is just how do we combat that, when it comes to embracing religion, because I think that religion is like, for myself, I don't know what religion looks like for myself. I kind of don't like the idea of religion. I'd rather, if religion meant, if that kind of understanding encompassed like, an understanding of like letting, of individuality, I guess, letting everybody kind of embrace their own, kind of follow their own, progression.
I would actually love to weigh in on this. I really don't want to talk too
Yeah.
much, so please interrupt me, please, everybody. I think that the reason why religions, and this is not just a Christian concept, think about it, like, and I'm not very familiar with it, so please, if I'm wrong, I would love to know. But I feel like Islam and other world religions that tend to be violent, that have violent tendencies, they rely on radical fear and hate for these radical movements to progress, right? So being taught that like you're at war from a very young age just creates that conflict and like adrenaline, that you really shouldn't be, I think, exposed to at such a young age. It just makes you so more susceptible to like developing trauma and trauma responses, right? So I think that just moving away from the whole concept that there's enemies everywhere you go, and just really releasing that fear is one of the biggest steps in moving away from that mentality as a whole. And it'll also just really realizing what strategies are used to induce fear. Like that knowledge is so powerful when it comes to identifying that in other religions or organizations or things that you just really want to be wary of, because you never want to step back into what you went through, right? I get that.
I'm going to make two comments on both the things that Amber's has said, so I'll just go ahead and say them. So the thing that you were talking about earlier about, I just want to get this comment out of the way about like religion kind of having a certain role in like societal structure and stuff like that. There's a lot of like really good evidence for that theory, like specifically, well, I mean, it's one hypothesis of many, but I really like this hypothesis about religion because it would go something like this, that like when we were really small groups, just our natural psychology was enough to keep people behaving, because it's like if you're 150 people, you can keep track of people, you have guilt, you have, it's hard to cheat people and stuff like that. But then when you have larger groups like cities with thousands of people, that organized religion can then fill that void, and that can be a way to be like, oh, there's this God watching over your shoulder and stuff like that. But some people think that that sort of modern governments are kind of taking that role, partially because,
Brianna, sorry, I think I missed something. Were you saying that since if there's a smaller group of people, if there's a larger group of people, that they need to fill the void with like a God?
Yeah, sorry. So with saying like in the environment we evolved in, like we were like very small groups of people, like I think 100, and people don't know exactly, because maybe around 100 people. And so you didn't really need like organized religion then, because you're just social interactions, the kind of ways that we if people personally, it's harder to cheat them and stuff like that. But or this is hypothesis, we don't know if this is true, but that organized religion might have come with agriculture and civilization. But that modern, if you have like a really good advanced like government state, that might take that role, because then all of a sudden you have these structures that also keep people in line. And a reason to think that is potentially is because a lot of like, with the exception pretty much of the US, most countries that have like more like really strong, people that have, well, I guess this isn't the exception of the US now I think about it, but in countries where there's a lot of confidence in their government and like faith in the government in the sense that it is not super corrupt and stuff like that, you see organized religion going down. So that's a potential reason to think that might be true. That maybe it's doing a certain thing. I think that's really.
I have a comment on that, and a follow-up sort of thing, which is, like, practically speaking, like if we were orchestrating the fabric of the future, which we kind of are, I guess, because we exist, but not that much. Do you think it's useful for like state to take that role, or do you think? Because I guess I'm actually very interested in religion. I was very spooked from it of it for a little while after I left home, but then I came back around to spirituality, and like 4 years or like 3 years after, well, more like 4 years after leaving Christianity, and I came to it from a similar place of like finding that a lot of things, but also finding that moral accountability type of thing. But I guess the thing I like about religion that has that instead of state or like government is that I think it gives people, especially if you can choose how you practice spirituality, it gives you the right to choose. It gives you the freedom to choose like a spirituality that I guess is more in line with that you can trust. Because like, for instance, if you can't prove or disprove God, and you can't, then you can kind of like know that he is good, if that makes any sense, or that they are good or she is good or whatever. Because if they are literally just goodness, you know what I mean? Then you can like know that this is completely good. But if there's a person in charge of the government, they are going to be inherently flawed. And so I wonder if it's enough for people to put their faith in a system that they kind of have to be second guessing, if they also need a infallible, like, or maybe some people like need an infallible authority that serves the purpose of helping people, obviously not in a way where they are given the where they're hateful or anything like that, but I don't know, just some curiosity there.
I think it might depend on the system. Like in the US, the reason why I said we don't probably fit into that is because I don't think we trust our government here.
Yeah. But do you think if we did, that would be useful? I guess that's my kind of question is like, do you think
so.
that trust would then make that system could become too powerful or something like that? You know what I mean?
I'm gonna let someone else answer now because I feel like
Yeah.
I'm talking too much. But yeah.
Anyway.
I don't know. I don't really have
Questions.
an opinion, but it's a good
Food for
question.
thought.
I think here in the United States, we have dwindling trust because we're too powerful. Our government is too powerful. We have such the largest military and the largest prison industrial complex in the world. So I think that's why trust is going down. But
I think you're right.
growing up in fundamentalism, my family was very patriotic. We very much believed that we could trust the government as long as it was run by Republicans, as it were. But to answer the question about religion itself, and having that question of like, I guess for me, I have not needed an authority per se anymore, or something that's infallible or something that's omniscient or omnipotent, because I think if something like that existed, things would be different than they are. It just because there would be some kind of intervening power, and nobody has that power. And so for me, I don't have a faith in that so much as I just have a faith in generally like recognizing that I can define my own higher power, and that that's okay. Like everybody can have their own version of the way things work. And that really turned me off for years and years, because I was like, well, you have to know like which one is right. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that some people have like a monopoly on the truth. It's just we each have our own way of interacting with the divine.
Mhm. It's really cool. Thank you for sharing. Hmm.
Okay, I have to make another comment. I'm just like waiting. I'm like, oh, like sure, I get other people the chance. I can talk about this subject forever. The other thing, kind of going back to what Amorous and Braden were saying earlier, about like, oh, I can't remember exactly. Both of you said something that made me think about this, but there's the issue about like hatred and like certain kinds of, the more harmful versions of religion, where you have like this like idea of a culture war and stuff like that. This very combative version.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer to this, but one of my kind of reflections recently, actually largely because of a book I just finished reading. It's very good. It's called The Ape That Understood the Universe. It's just about like evolutionary psychology and also a lot about memetics and stuff. And so, which is just this idea that sometimes you can have cultural concepts that pass on that are very strong, very like, kind of like how in biology you can have things that pass on because they're good at, they help with reproduction. You can have like cultural ideas that stick around, not necessarily because they're good for us, but just because they're really good at passing on. And I get worried about that because sometimes the things that are really good at passing on are really damaging things. Like, for example, if you're afraid of hell, the concept of hell is a great example of that, because it's like, that can pass on so easily because it plays into our fears. Or things that are about like me versus them, us versus them, that passes on really well because that goes deep into some of the darker aspects of our psychology. And so it's like these things are damaging, but I also feel like they're almost inevitable, it seems like, and that they root in our minds so easily, by the millions. Like, so I don't have an answer for that, but that concerns me because I don't know how you can combat that. It feels like you're kind of trying to combat something that's like human nature almost. So I don't know. Curious to see what other people think about that, but it disturbs me.
Try and condense all of my thoughts and make them all coagulate's not the right word for all of these different topics. But I have ADHD, so we'll see how this goes.
Same.
So on the original question of it, and kind of bouncing off what Bree said originally, is I think religion can and does like it kind of has to have a place in society, because part of human nature is the desire to look for something outside of ourselves. Like, even outside of religion, I mean, you can just look at space exploration, because we looked up and we went, bright fuckers up there, wonder what else there might be. And then we built a rocket and landed on the moon. And, we're still exploring space, and I love space.
Sorry to interject, but doesn't that mean we don't need religions, and so we can get that in other areas like science?
But there's I think they're saying though, right? Like we've always looked for something outside of ourselves. But I think it can also depend on, how Bree, you were saying earlier. Sorry, I'll like get right back to
Interject.
I was gonna say, you were saying earlier how or somebody, it was either, I think it was you, Bree, was saying like how, what is a religion? Because like all these religions can be different things, and we just say this is a religion, this is a religion. We put the label of religion on something. So if you take the label of religion off of like, Buddhism or Taoism and Christianity, they're not that similar. You know what I mean? Like they are looking for something but outside yourself. But then like you could say, a lot of people say, Taoism, for instance, or Buddhism can be like non-religious depending on how you practice, especially Taoism, because it's like, it's kind of almost like a philosophy, or, and in that way, you could say religion is, or spirituality or something is looking for something outside of yourself, which then science could be called that, because it's a way of thinking about things. I mean, I understand that you, but that's
I
just
disagree.
what I'm putting out there as like, not necessarily that there's a definitive definition of any of these things, but just that maybe the urge to look outside yourself is something that we find in lots of things that we call religions, and maybe some of them have inherent things that are more harmful than other ones of them. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, no,
That's just where
I
I'm at.
I definitely agree with that. Like there's a lot of, I know at least in my Christian upbringing, the way it was like, well, this is all fucked up and we can't do anything about it, but this thing up here, out here can fix everything. So we just got to believe hard enough in that. And, you know, do your proselytizing and it's all gonna be great after the world ends.
Very passive.
But like, so I think like, even like taking the label of religion off, I think it is an innate human thing to just go looking for something, like even if it is just science, which as a scientist, science is a thing. Like we innately want to go, hush, dude, I'm trying to, sir, it's so dramatic. Like we innately want to go looking for something to explain the things that we cannot figure out for ourselves, I think. And I think because religion is so, like, it's such a widespread and available thing, people just kind of go, that makes enough sense, I guess. And then, you know, you raise your kids in it and you just bully your kids into believing the same thing you do. And then, oh, hey, look, trauma cycle. Like with many, many other things. Where was I going with this? So I think it does have like a place personally for people, no matter what, even if it is like, I don't believe that there's anything out there, that's still a stance on what you do or do not believe. So I think personally religion has to have a place in society just because people go looking for that kind of thing, whether they want to or not. However, I think that when you start getting to the point of where it's incredibly institutionalized, like modern Western evangelicism is, and especially when it gets wrapped in with like politics and other things like that, it can become incredibly dangerous because it does become that kind of single-mindedness that leads to running things just so far off the rails that there isn't any hope of recovering it. So like TLDR, I think religion does have a place in society, but only like personally, not necessarily as a big picture for everybody type thing.
Like not organized religion, but like personalized spirituality. Is that?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. And like, even if it is like, I mean, you can still have, I would say, organized religion, but I think it would have to be like even footing. Because like, especially in the Western world, it's like Christianity is considered like Christianity is the religion. But every religion has kind of like their fundamental, like, this is the truth thing. It's just that because Charlemagne, it's Christianity kind of in the
Thanks,
Western
Charlemagne.
world. Thanks, Charlemagne. Kurt. Where's I going with that? Oh, I had a train of thought. My train of thought crashed.
Yeah, that's all really cool stuff.
Yes, I think it's just, you have to be, I think careful about how it's utilized necessarily, because when you do get into like that, you know, fundamentalist and the like, you know, Western evangelicism is super tied into politics, which is a thing I grew up in. Like, I still have not told my parents that I voted for Biden, because that's going to cause more of a fight than me coming out to them, I'm pretty sure. Because Democrats are the devil's politicians.
There's that us versus them nonsense again.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have this soft disagreement. I don't even know if I would call it a disagreement, but it's like, I just want to say that I feel like that desire to seek things out, to understand things that are greater and larger than us. I agree that seems to be a human universal. Like, we all have that kind of desire. I wouldn't call that religion though. I would say that religion is one way that we can scratch that itch. And science being another way we can scratch that itch, which is has a very different approach. And so I would just say that I'd be like, I just define it that way, which is probably
that's
you already
what I
made
was
anyway, but
trying to say. Yeah,
just to
it's
clarify.
like,
yeah,
no, like religion is one way to fill that void, and it seems to be kind of the one that people tend to gravitate towards because it's so easy to access, at least in my experience.
It's more intuitive to our minds, I think. Like, the way of thinking scientifically is not the way our minds want to think.
And actually, as you say that, you kind of got to wonder if it's because with science, you have to think about your own impact on stuff. Like, science, I think, is a lot more of the ramifications of yourself on the world. Whereas if you have religion, you can go, well, God, whatever. And you don't necessarily have to take any personal responsibility for it, which is a thing I just thought about.
I think it's also just I'm sorry, and then I'll stop after this and give other people a chance to about it. But I think it's also just our pattern seeking aspect of our mind, because we're that part of our mind is so like overcorrecting, so like we see patterns, especially anything that feels a pattern that feels like it could be intelligent. And so it's very easy for us to say, oh, this, you see like a storm, and to think about it as something angry, or to give it a personality, to say there's a God. Like, that's just easy for our brains to do. But to think scientifically it just isn't how we're built. But it's better at finding the truth.
Yeah, I think there's a principle that I think most of y'all will be really familiar with, but it's the idea that the ego creates a story to keep you safe. And I think that the ego is in its nature insatiable. And so like the desire to reach for something outside of yourself, but also in addition, think about the desire when you're in a happy relationship to think that, okay, well, maybe there's something better out there, even though you really do like have a good relationship. Or like you dream about being rich and famous, and the people who are rich and famous kill themselves, because that's right. It's this insatiable just machine of asking for more, and science, mysticism, I don't know, I think, or religion, I think all of that feeds into not only the ego's need to like devour, but also like its need to identify with things and to feel like a good person. And I think religion is such a crutch for people who are controlled by their ego to like constantly tell themselves that they're a good person and that what they're doing is right and what they're thinking is right, and to feel it's their way of feeling like special and like a good person. And so like working backwards from that, just think about how much your ego demands, like how it needs to be validated and fed constantly.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm curious, like, how y'all feel that. So I noticed a thread through all of what we're saying, which is like the importance for a person to be able to practice what they want to, what they feel is right, and as long as it doesn't like hurt other people. Like, people have their own beliefs, and people have to have their own path to the truth, or the right to, I guess, like freedom of religion. Not that that actually exists in the United States, but like it feels that we seem to agree on the fact that people should be able to seek their own path to the truth. But so what do you guys? So I guess what do you guys think? Since a lot of what people have been saying that did also have to do with spirituality was like around, people can believe what they want and pick and choose what works for them. If we end up, I guess, with a lot of different kinds of people, then with just totally unique spiritualities to their own identity or to a very small group of people, how do you think that we find community and unity that, like, sometimes the church in America at least provides a lot of community and unity for people? How do you think we find that kind of community and unity with like differing spiritual or philosophical leanings, in order to nurture a good society and friends and family and all that? Or maybe not family, depends. Chosen family, depends.
I just want to say we haven't heard from Ashley yet, so I just want to see if Ashley had anything. If you wanted to say anything, it's fine if not. I just want to give you the chance if so.
Oh, I get that. I'm sorry. I'm a little shy and I'm battling a migraine, so I feel like I'm very disjointed. But I don't know. I think as far as the first question goes, between like, does religion have a place in society? I think it depends on if you're talking about, is there space in society to have religious structure, or are we basing our structure of society on religion?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, especially at least in the West, I think there's a lot of society structured around religion, and I think we can do away with that. But yeah, I don't know. That's just a thing that popped into my brain, but I don't need to go on a whole diatribe about it.
Thank you for sharing. I feel that.
For your second question, I think that's a really difficult one. And I think it's something that I would say in the US, I'm sure this is true in a lot of countries, but definitely in the US, it's like a probably important question to ask, even more broadly, like how do we find unity as a culture? Because we're not doing a very good job at that right now. We're doing the opposite of that. And it seems to me that in order to have that sense of like community, that isn't, if you have a lot of diversity of perspectives, whether they're religious or not, or whatever they are, like you have a diversity of, opinions and stuff like that, you have to have something else that you share, something else that is in common, something else that you use to define yourselves as a group. Otherwise you won't be a group. If that's what you're trying to do, if you're trying to become a group.
Yeah.
And I think that helps for building community. So I don't really know the answer, but I feel like that's the way to find the answer. It's like, how do you?
Yeah, what defines you together? And I think the thing that frustrates me with that is like, I first found community leaving Christianity with like the LGBT community, and I love the LGBT community, obviously, but there was a very specific culture within that. Like they have it's like its own subculture, especially here in Austin, and it had its own stuff. And it's not that I always necessarily vibed, like there was a lot of partying and stuff like that, and like substance use. And so I didn't necessarily always vibe 100% with that. And I didn't just want to hang with, it's not like I wanted to only ever hang with queer people and nobody else. You know what I mean? So, and I wanted to find all the people, because I agreed with lots of people, but there's just not meeting spaces for, there's not meeting spaces for a lot of different kinds of people. Even if we're like for instance, all of us, for instance, I use the thing of like, oh, we're deconstructionists, or we're ex-evangelical, because at least we're starting from kind of something. But assuming that we didn't even have that title, there's still a lot of this. It seems really meaty and like necessary and good, like conversation and diversity of thought and all these things, and also just unity of belief. That like if we were in like a church community, but like take out the religion, like it's just people talking about life and singing and dancing and having meaningful conversations and sharing friends and family and potlucks, then that seems like it would be very nourishing for us. But it's like, how would that happen? Like, because like, what would be the unifying factor, I guess, like you're saying, and any unifying factor that I've thought of seems to taint the original thought. I still think the LGBT community is great and necessary, but then I don't want a space only for LGBT people, and then there's like, I got involved in like the social justice circle, which is a very tight knit, amazing group of people, but that's just people getting burned out. Like, you know, they need the healing space. That's not a healing space. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I haven't thought of it yet, really, or found it. Except for I found like other religion things, like getting involved in Wicca. And I'm like, well, these are only religious people I want to hang with, not just that. So I don't know. Man.
I've kind of been in that space lately of like just not like feeling like I don't fit in anywhere because I don't know, I don't want to be in a space that is like I only grew up in spaces that were like exclusionary or, you know, central to one idea or a thing. And I'm kind of in this place where like I just don't want to be, I don't want the spaces that I exist in to be revolving around like a thing, but I don't know where that is. So
I gotta say, like, my gut reaction to that question is, I mean, well, you already said it, like, just take out religion out of it entirely. Just scrap that idea. But I think, like, does there have to be a, like, defining factor for a group other than the fact that this is a group of people who don't fit in anywhere else? Is kind of like, because that kind of allows people to either put themselves in or take themselves out without there being any kind of specific parameters outside of like, don't be an asshole.
I think you need to have something in order to create a group, in order to give it focus. But sometimes, like if you're, so, you know, we're not talking about like big stuff, like how do we feel united as a nation? And we're just talking about like, how do I find community? How do I feel like I'm a part of something without having the, you know, the trappings of, you know, some of these negative forms of religion? I think to me, it's like interests are what I've found is like the best way to do that.
Yeah.
You know, like if I'm finding other people that, or even, you know, other people that are the same age that want to do something, like we're going to go hike or something like that, like, or let's get together and discuss topics, you know, discuss deep topics. Like you have some sort of a thing that you're going to do. People that want to do that thing are going to come. People that don't want to do that thing are not going to go. I don't think that's anywhere near the kind of depth of community that Chris is talking about. So I don't think this is necessarily meeting that, but that's like the closest I've been able to come personally is like, okay, let's find, you know, it's like the idea of a club, except not just that, like you have to take it to another level, I think. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That was kind of the other thought that I had is like, yeah, I mean, fuck, that was the only way I had friends in high school. That's the only reason I still have friends now, is because most of my friends now are friends from high school, from programs that I did. But it's, yeah, I mean, I think it would have to, I'm just spitballing and thinking out loud here because ADHD doesn't do the inside brain very well.
Good.
Like, it would almost have to be just a like, hey, this is stuff that we're going to be discussing, you know, like respectful human beings.
It's a respectful club.
Yeah, because well, the thing is, I think if you're trying to avoid any kind of exclusion, which like Braden said, like, yeah, anything that's like at least Christian based is very exclusionary. Like, man, going to somebody else's youth group was terrifying. Oh my God. And that might have just been my anxiety, but like, holy fuck, was that scary.
I feel like that's legitimately scary, no matter like what anxiety anyone's dealing with. That's just awful. Nobody, sorry, keep
like,
going.
yes, here, go to this place of a bunch of people your age that you don't know and play dumb icebreakers with them. but like, yeah, like I think the only way to keep it from being exclusionary would be to make it that kind of you'd have to make it really broad. It's there's a scientific concept and I can't remember what it's called, where like when you start kind of grouping up stuff for doing experiments or for gathering data, like you start with a very, very broad, only kind of related thing. And then from there, as you go, you kind of figure out what your like main data points are, I guess. So like kind of a like more of do it not so much as we all have this thing in common, but more as these are things we're going to discuss, or this is what we're going to do. And then through those discussions, you will kind of figure out what you have in common. So I guess it's almost more of a like working backwards from the way you would usually think about it. But
Or what
I
you
don't
have
know
in
if that's like
common.
an actual feasible thing at all, but
Like what you have in common in that situation is that you're people that want to discuss these things. You know, you're people that want to do these things together. I had a group that I joined once. It was a meetup group in like the DC area that was kind of like that, where it was like an author that we were focused around, and like different topics related to that author. And that was so cool. And it was just and it was a super diverse group, like every sense of the word diverse, like we were all very different people. But we all came with this desire to have conversations, and that was really cool. And I missed that group, and I wish they were still where I live now. But
I wish I could remember the term, because my friend talked to me about it recently, and I've heard it before. But there's a term, I don't know if any of you guys remember it or know of it, but where like you take anything and you like use it as a like a sacred text essentially, and then you have methods of analyzing it that were apparently very old, but you could literally use a fiction book or like anything, and it has supposedly like therapeutic and like community bonding kind of attributes to it. I need to find what it is, because the only thing I'm thinking of is sacred text, but that's not the whole thing. But it was a method that people could use to kind of basically create a religious-esque environment, as far as like having those same like
the way you study
Yeah.
scripture, kind of.
Exactly. Because basically, and you all know this probably, if you're reading the Bible and studying scripture and meditating, you can mean whatever you get out of it, right? It can mean whatever you're. So what?
text mining.
I think it was something like in Latin. So I can't remember it. I might have to text her and ask her. I think she said they were doing it with some like fantasy book. I can't remember the word. But yeah, but like having really in-depth conversations, and then having that same sort of meditating on philosophy and life stuff and each other's lives and things like that. But interesting. I honestly just can't wait until people that are less traditionally religious just acquire enough wealth that we can just get a building and be like, this is a church, but like it's not a church. It's a non-church church. And then when everybody comes there and gets the idea, we can take the non-church church sign down, and it's just what it is.
The non-church church.
Oh, I'd go to that. I'd try that.
But it's not a church.
Hang out. We're potlucking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a potluck club.
It's a potluck.
The potluck club.
Is that kind of what I'm just going to reveal ignorance here, but is that like kind of what oh God, I forget what they're called. The Unitarian. Is that kind of what they do? Or do they have like a set belief?
No, the Unitarians, you can come and believe anything. But what's interesting, I haven't actually I've gone to one service, but you can believe anything, but they do seem to be a very spiritual group. Like as in, you have people there who are atheists, but you have a lot of people there who grew up in these different religions and still really, really experience those things and want to seek those like deities or whatever, but in this group where they can meet other people and they don't think that that's it's usually kind of an understanding that all paths lead to the truth, kind of a
Okay,
vibe
okay,
and no
that
judgment.
makes sense.
So it seems more like, to me anyway, it felt like more like, not like no spirit, no religion or no spirituality, but just like all spiritualities or all religions welcome. And yeah, the church didn't have any doctrine. So I guess the teachings were all very like vague. No one was teaching on like God or Muhammad or anything like that.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
but I couldn't go so far. I keep trying to go because it started out as Christianity, like apparently, and then like kind of like became this. So it's very formatted. It's extremely formatted, like a church service. Even down to the fact that they sang a hymn. I had to like leave the service because they sang a hymn and it had like generic words, but it was to the tune of like an actual hymn. And I was
Oh.
like,
Mm.
No, no.
no.
Yeah, I would
Y'all,
nip out of that too. Yeah, if I could do that.
no.
You sing 2
We
songs,
tried.
you have the prayer, they extort you. You sing another song, you listen to the pastor for an hour, you sing 2 more songs, then you go home.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I mean, I love what they're doing. I think a lot of older people, it seemed like, go there, and which maybe like religion was very comforting also for them. And then maybe even if they fell away from it, it just still feels nice, which is cool. But we kind of just already talked about the second topic that I had on here, which was community spaces. Thank y'all for all sharing very thoughtful and cool thoughts about that stuff. Like generally the next stuff I was asking about was like basically like resources, and these have to do with religion too. It's like resources and housing was my next 2 questions. So people who either left religious spaces or who just don't belong to like traditional religious spaces sometimes can have more difficulty getting having resources, having access to like housing or access to medical care or just all if you leave home prematurely or anything like that, or are kicked out or anything, not knowing stuff about how the world works, not having access to family members to like help you out with that. So how do you guys I guess think either personally have navigated finding resources and stuff like that, or how do you think we as a society can be better at like making sure that people who don't have those built-in networks of like traditional religion or traditional family can get access to those things?
I mean, we probably just need organizations for that. And I think we do have some, but the problem is that if you're someone who's young, who's coming out of like a religious context and you're vulnerable for whatever reason and you need help, like how are you going to know that those places even exist in the first place?
Mhm.
That's a challenge.
And you can be vulnerable to like just like abuse or abusive relationships or trusting the wrong people or like those kinds of things too. So that makes it more difficult.
Mhm, mhm.
And I think kind of tying into that a little bit of the like, how would you even know it exists? Like, at least for me and the way that, I was brought up, and I don't know if it's a common thing across the board, because obviously I only have my experiences, but like, at least in my version of, or my ex version of Christianity, whatever, like, it's kind of like a no-go to go ask for help for anything or anybody outside of the church. Like, if you can't get it from the church, then fuck you, which is like why I didn't get to go to therapy until I was halfway through college. Type stuff. So like I would imagine that also kind of plays into it, because like I utilized the food pantry at school when I was, in college, because that's free food and I was broke as fuck. But like it took me a long time to be okay with like going and doing that, because I think there's also the inherent like the pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality is also weirdly like integrated into Western evangelicism. Like it's very, God helps those who help themselves, which is nowhere in the Bible. Type thing. So like I think just the pressure and reluctance to like even go looking for help definitely plays into like the lack of resources, because then that also becomes the, well, nobody's going to use it, so why would we fund this type of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think there needs to be better awareness about what religious abuse looks like in society. I think, like, especially, I mean, I still have family members who will say things to people on the outside, and they'll be like, "Oh, this is a thing, right?" And people just kind of brush it off as if it's like, "Oh, you know, that's just like a religious household." There's almost this acceptance for people being extremely fundamentalist, and because it's religious freedom. But people don't know how to identify abuse, and so that kind of takes away from resources of people who are inside of that. I know for me, like, getting out was so hard because I couldn't explain to people what I was experiencing, not only because I didn't have the language to explain it when I was in the cult that I was in, but also because there wasn't an awareness of what that looked like on the outside.
That's a really good point. Like, there's
Yeah.
a lot of people like in secular world that do not understand what it's like on the inside of these subcultures.
Yeah. I think just better education would help that. And I think those organizations and resources might come out of that education.
I would like to see more, like, I would like to see more organization toward like helping people get integrated. Like I didn't even, you know, when I like left my family, I had a social security number, but I didn't know how to recover it. Like, it was my parents like literally burned my social security number when I was a child. And I like me and my younger brother, like, we have social security numbers, but the rest of the like 5 children who are born after us don't even have that, because but like there's just nothing to help. There's no kind of like you have to figure out everything yourself if you're in that kind of situation. Like, there's no kind of organization, at least when I was figuring it out, or when, you know, anybody I know was figuring it out. There's nothing to help you kind of navigate that weird like neutral ground of like, I was born in America, but I just like have no
The documentation that you were born in America.
yeah, and there's the more that I look into it, there's just so many people who are in that situation of not knowing how to like transition from the cult.
Out of curiosity, what was that like? Like, how did you navigate that?
Well, I was kind of lucky because I'd been to a doctor. I had a pretty serious yeast infection when I was a kid, and so my parents took me to like an allopath, I guess, or like a naturopath who is like enough connected with like the you know, medical system that there were actual records that existed of me having gone to this doctor when I was like 17 or whatever, and I was able to recover. Like, you know, my parents didn't help me with that. I had to like dig back myself and like track down the doctor, and then track down like the records that existed of me having gone to this doctor. and recover that as part of like the identification, you know, to get a social security number and then a driver's license and whatever. But
I do. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I think I finished my thought. That was basically like, but I was like I said, I was lucky. I had gone to the doctor or whatever, you know. Like, I don't know what my younger siblings are going to do, honestly, to if they want to get into the system or whatever.
I know from experience with dealing with other people in that situation, because like you said, it is actually quite common. Especially I noticed with like super fundamentalist people who don't trust medicine, like they'll have home births and it's easier for them to not give their kids social security numbers. Oddly enough, if you have a family Bible, sometimes that's record enough. I think that's one of the things that they tell Amish kids to do if they want to get a social security number is find like religious records of their birth.
Mm.
But I don't know, that was just a side topic on that.
Yeah.
That makes me
Yeah.
so upset. It's because they're kids. Kids should be able to choose whether or not they're going to be in the system or not. Like you shouldn't be able to take that choice from them.
Yeah.
There are a lot of
Yeah.
choices you shouldn't be able to take from kids, and yet I think people forget that children are also just small humans.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Like
They're not your
can't-
carbon copies. You don't get to just make them into your image. And also even if
Exactly.
you try to do that, it's not always going to work. So
And they're not
I mean,
yours. I
like-
kind of don't like the term like your children. Like they're just the children
they're
that
their own
came
children.
through you. They're their own human. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's
Yes,
it's,
congrats. You
I-
had
I-
a vagina and that child came out of it.
to be fair, I think the possessive word in that context isn't the same. It doesn't mean the same thing as saying like my laptop. It's
Yeah,
the
I
same-
mean, I
it's
think
similar to like
but I just mean
my
some
mother.
people use it that way. You know what I mean?
Sure,
Like,
sure.
And
But
my
I
child
child
is like,
needs to, my mother, my
Yeah.
country. I don't own these things, but they're still related to me, I
Yeah.
guess.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish we had. It's a sidetrack. I wish we had better language. Like, I wish we had better words in English to convey that. Because, like, in a lot of other languages, they have different prefixes or suffixes that will indicate, like, if you mean it in a, like, relational way or a possessive way or in, a familial way versus a friend way.
Mhm.
And stuff like that.
Yeah. I would love
I
to see.
periodically find myself going, damn, English is a bad language.
Oh, it's not a bad language. It's just like every language has its pluses and minuses. What
English
is great at.
is three other languages in a trench coat beating up
Stacked
This
up.
is
on-
other
very
languages in an alley and rifling through its pockets for punctuation and spare grammar.
This is very true. What I do like about English though is that it's like concise. We have a lot of short words.
That is true.
You can say
Yeah,
things.
we don't have
less
14
time.
different
Like you have the
Mhm.
same text,
plural tenses.
like saying English versus Spanish, just for example, it'll take more space on this page and it'll take longer to say the same thing in Spanish. But anyway, side note. I
Sorry,
like
that
that.
was a complete sidetrack. My
I
bad.
know. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just like sidetracked it more.
I was gonna say that I wish that there was. I got to wish that there was more resources for this kind of thing, because I was all raised without identification and all that stuff. And then whenever I was trying to do it, the problem with that is obviously I guess, but it puts people in the position of, if like Ash was saying, you can't explain what you're going through to somebody and you don't know what to look for resources. And then if you don't have social security or bank account or anything like that, it's a lot more difficult to leverage your any kind of power you may have, because you're probably forced to staying with people who potentially could be furthering the abuse and all that stuff. And if they it could be situation where like, if they find out what you're doing, then you get further restricted, or I mean, honestly, just held captive, to call it what it is. But like, so people are like, because I remember like going to all the, like, I moved in with like my boyfriend family who was like less conservative than my family, but still very, very conservative. And so they were like, they thought we should have social security though. So he was trying to help me with that. But even in that situation was not very good. Like they were still pretty, like not great as far as just religion and control and all that stuff. But still, they were trying to help me get my social security. So I remember we were going to like we're just going all around. We just did so much, and no, I was homeschooled, home birth, all that stuff. So like, no doctor records, no school records, no nothing. And it was through a really, really weird loophole, and also I know my own just like privilege, that I was able to even do any of that stuff, because like I flew to Washington to go stay with them, and I had no identifications, but I just like basically used like white privilege and like at the time like very femme privilege of being like, oh my god, I just forgot, please let me finish, and they're just like, okay, I guess it's fine. We'll
That
just like
work?
pat you. Yes. And there I was like, oh my god, I can't believe it. And I would like make myself start crying, and they'd be like, oh, it's fine. Just like they like check your luggage and pat you down, and I was like, fine, no problem. I am escaping. It's good. Yes, it worked. I know, would not. I didn't realize the privilege that I was using at the time. I kind of did, because I was like, no. I mean, I didn't understand as much about like race and stuff. But yeah, pretty girl privilege is a thing, and so is white privilege, even more so than that. So I did that, right? And so I at least had that. But even still, going to stay with that family, like I still couldn't get anything from the bureaucratic system, or whatever you want to call it. Like they just didn't have any resources for that. They're like, there's just no way to give you documents when you don't have any documents. There's just nothing set up for that. So I would love to see something.
It seems like there needs to be some legal changes too. Like there's no acknowledgement of the fact that we have 3 people in this call that experienced this, right? Like,
oh yeah, there's tons and tons.
Like that, like clearly there isn't enough national awareness of how often this happens.
Yeah. When my younger sister left home before me and was trying to get it, she made a YouTube video about it, and it got like millions of views and stuff. And it was very interesting because she was like, I need to figure out how to do this, how to get a birth certificate, or how to get Social Security. A lot of the comments were like, this girl's just lying, this is impossible. And a lot of them were like, I'm in the same situation. Like, I want to say like, it felt like a third of them were like, I'm in the same situation. So of course they were like Googling that and like found her thing. But so yeah, there's apparently a lot of people in that situation.
I don't know which makes me angrier, the fact that there were so many people in the same situation, or the fact that people didn't believe her.
Yeah, I was like, I think outside your box. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, but there are loopholes. They're very. I just wish we probably need to like organize something to like get the information out there, make a little ebook or something. But then like, how do you even get that to people that are in that situation? Because like people that aren't online and they're like not.
I know, because if it's just a matter of online, it's like you use all the best search engine optimization you can, so you get it to the top of the results. That's what you do. But a lot of people in these kind of situations have been, restricted from using internet during their life. Yeah. So they don't even know what to do. Like they don't even know how to find things. I mean, some will, but some won't.
Yeah, and what's weird too is like, I mean, y'all probably experience this too. I know there's like Child Protective Services, right? They came to our house multiple times, but still nothing ever happened.
Wait, tell us more about that. Like, yeah, what happened? What didn't happen?
Well, actually, I only learned that they came multiple times way after I had left. I knew that one time that they came, which was that my mom, the way they disciplined us was abuse. All of it was very horrible. But my mom had a mom blog that was like a homeschooler, well known, and she did a post on like punishing her toddler, and it was horrible. She just like didn't even know it was horrible because she was all in this own like same like loop, as everybody else. But it was just really appalling. And people found it because she started to get more views on her blog or whatever, and called the CPS on her. And so I guess somehow maybe she figured it was going to happen because they were commenting, like, we're going to call, these people. And like, they were like, haha, we found your address. And like, we're like, put like, cause she had like posts of like how the house looked and the outside decoration and stuff. So they went and like found, and like, so she knew it was going to happen. So she took us to stay with the grandparents.
They shouldn't have warned her.
I know. They were very disorganized, angry people though, which is fair enough because it was just anger inducing. But we all went to stay with the grandparents, and my dad was there. And I remember it was so interesting because my brother had this like prized recorder that he would use to record like hymns and stuff on. was like one of his favorite pieces of technology. And so one time later, this is the only reason I found out that this happened, is because later I went to listen to it and I was like, I'm going to listen to some of the songs that he recorded. And I heard, apparently when they came, my dad, who's also like a lawyer, picked it up and put it in his pocket and started recording so he could like use anything they said, you know, against them. And so he would have everything on record. So I listened to the whole conversation of my dad, like talking to them and being, and like saying like, oh, you know, why do you need to know? Like basically just denying everything and not letting them in, being like, you don't have a search warrant. And like, you know, saying they're like refusing to answer questions and, you know, also just like lying and stuff like that. So they came to the door and they were asking him like, excuse us, can you let us in? We had some like complaints, we just, you know, whatever. And he was just saying, you know, not until I've spoken to my lawyer, and like, you don't have a warrant, and like all these things, and just denying everything. And then, you know, I don't know all the whole process that would followed up on that, but I know that it was going on for months because my mom later talked about it like at a speaking event for like other homeschool moms, was like explaining how she got through the struggle. And I like eavesdropped on her and heard like it apparently had been going on for months. And she just tried to take us out of the house anytime they were trying to come over. So we would go and stay with her grandparents, or she would take us out to Costco or something. And my dad would just talk to them. But I do remember one time they sat us down and they were like, we thought they were the bad guys. They were like, these are the people that the government are coming to take you away. And they're like, you can't say anything that they could be used against you. Like, you can't say it. Like, they basically coached us on like how to, don't talk to them about like this, and talk to them about this, because I know it seems normal and good, but like, you know, spankings or like how we talk to you or anything that could be taken as bad because they'll use it and twist it. Of course, they wouldn't, they would just use it as normal, but they trained like 6-year-old, like, don't say anything or they're going to take you away, and like scare them. So they never actually came, and they never actually did. And I think my mom had to take a toddler to the doctor because they had to examine him for like bruises or something like that. And they didn't find anything because that wasn't the issue. It wasn't, you know, hitting hard enough to leave marks or leave bruises or anything like that. So they were like, well, there's no bruises. So, and of course, my mom's a good actor. Like, all these people are like good front facing when they're dealing with their kids in front of other people. They seem nice. So she was all like, oh, like acting all sweet and like great with us in front of those people. So nothing ever happened. Yeah. So
I
those
wish
systems
Child
are,
Protective Services was as powerful as our
they
parents
pretended it
told
was.
us they were.
Yeah.
No, right?
Like,
I know, you're like, yeah.
Oh my God. On that note too, something that's interesting about having super insular circles is I know that my parents with CPS, because I know that CPS was called, and I think they came over at one point too for us.
Mhm.
My parents had a bunch of like people to come to bat for them.
Mhm.
So like, oh, if CPS ever shows up, you have all of these like character witnesses who are going to come forward and be like, oh, no, they're a fine family. There's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that was something that was told to me too when I was super young. Like, and at first it was like, oh, don't worry, no one's going to take you away. We have people to vouch for us. And then when I got older and I started noticing the abuse and I was like threatening myself to call CPS, they were like, oh, we have people to vouch for us. So like, you're going to look crazy. So I don't know how you combat something like that when you are, and I recently had a situation with CPS too, with a family like this and someone that I know, right? And they called me and I was like, listen, you don't understand. There are people, you're going to get a bunch of people who say that they're good, but you have to look deeper into that. You can't just believe all these people around them. It's like, it's an insular circle. And I had a really hard time explaining that to the person on the other end of the phone, just because it was like, well, you just sound like this one person who's concerned, but you're like, I can't, I have all these other people saying that it's fine, you know?
Sounds like a flaw in the system.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and again, this goes back to what you were saying, that like people don't understand what these cultures are actually like. The people who need is the people who most need to understand don't seem to understand.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like there's a real lack of education about it. In especially in systems that should be there to protect kids especially, but people, there's just a lack of understanding.
Yeah.
A lot of it seems like that stems from people on the outside going, well, there's no way that could possibly happen, because
Yeah.
it does. Like, when you're in it, you're like, yeah, makes sense, whatever, this is what I've grown up with. But like, you look at it from the outside and it looks like a fucking movie.
Yeah.
It was like, that's gotta be fiction, right? Like,
Someone needs to make
it's
a
like
documentary about this.
it's honestly, and like, it's really interesting that you guys are talking about CPS, because I had totally like forgotten that was like a whole thing. Because my mom was and still is, unfortunately, super involved with chia and HSLDA.
Oh no.
And I remember I know CPS showed up one time. I don't remember why or anything, but I remember that like HSLDA was the big thing, and it was like, if CPS shows up and tries to take you away, you call HSLDA, and then you call all these people from church, and you hand the phone to you hand the phone with HSLDA on it. You don't let them in the house, and you let HSLDA talk to them, which is just, that's more of just a side note, but I had just like completely forgotten about that until you guys mentioned it, and like, shit, that's real fucked up.
That was a real
That
thing,
you're coaching,
dude.
that you're coaching your children to defend their abuse. That sure was a thing.
It's interesting because like in my
Wild
environment,
what you repress.
Mhm.
Shit.
yeah, I experienced a really, really mild version of that. Like it was, I was definitely not in a cult like some of you all were, but there was spanking, which was considered, which I remember my mom saying that like that like other people thought it was abusive, but it wasn't, kind of a thing, and that we were never supposed to talk about it. We weren't supposed to, and she was clear that she would never do that kind of discipline in public. But it was like framed as like this, like, oh,
Spare the rod, spoil the child.
the outside secular world is wrong and they don't understand, and also like this weird, like, there's this thing that like people who don't spank their kids end up with bratty, disrespectful kids, kind of a thing. And so, it was framed as like, this is something we do because we love you, because this is good training, and the Bible says to do it. Which is the best argument for anything. And
Don't.
yeah, but that's how it was framed. It was just like,
oh yeah, no.
yeah, so don't, there was a very mild version of that kind of coaching too, where it was like, I remember like there was a sense of like, yeah, we don't want CPS to ever come, and that would be scary. Nothing like that ever happened, because again, it was not on the same level, but
Yeah.
Makes me think of, I read a text post recently that said that abusers groom their witnesses as carefully as they groom their victims. Which,
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good, because like, yeah, like I was saying, my mom was always so good at putting on a front in front of other people. Completely different person. Like my mom and dad my mom was pretty charming, but my dad was so charming, like as a person in general, but like especially when he was facing the outside. Like no one could imagine, if they'd met that person, that would be the same person in charge of all this stuff, So it would be, so it's like they were very like about appearances, and like y'all were saying, like you couldn't imagine that would be true, that like this person could be one way, and then suddenly, just when you're not there, they're this other person to their kids. Like you would think that must sound like a fiction, yeah, it reminded me actually of when I had to come to terms with like when the whole BLM stuff started happening, the Black Lives Matter movement. I didn't understand about racism and stuff. I was kind of taught that racism was like done away with, and it wasn't there. Like there was no problem with that. Like there was the slavery and Civil War, and like you don't even want to know what my family thought about that. But Confederate flags, they're everywhere. But they were kind of like, hey, once that
Sorry, in Texas, you had Confederate
Sorry?
flags in Texas. Do I have that? I have that correct, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad was all about Confederate flags. We had so many Confederate flags. And anyway, yeah,
I mean, it
lots of
doesn't
stuff.
sound-
They biblically try to like biblically justify it, like why like slavery.
Tell me
And
you're
talking about,
racist
like-
without telling me.
So, but yeah, but they
Uh.
essentially said that after slavery there was no more inequality anymore. That everybody now, for better or for worse, was like equal. That's basically what
They
said.
literally
So
said that after slavery. That was what they taught
that
you.
was it.
We're not
Everybody
even
was equal.
touching on segregation or
And I didn't know about. I didn't really understand slavery, even though I had technically like read an American Girl book, and they're like, yeah, that was this. And then we talked about Civil War, and they were like, they said that was about states' rights, you know. So I didn't really have a huge concept of it even. I just kind of a footnote. So then I didn't even understand. I was kind of raised what people call like colorblind or something like that, because I was just so gaslit about the whole thing, I guess, that I just didn't even realize that like racism was a thing at all, basically. And so
It's so funny to me because I definitely sorry, I just had to interject. There was definitely a level of indoctrination in my education about history, but hearing that is like so much a higher level of like just false. It just blows my mind. I'm just like, can't believe that.
Even like I was saying, my dad would be like, well, in the Bible they talked about like slaves obey your masters. Like he would like,
Yeah.
"Isn't that bad?" That kind of stuff. He would say.
What?
Yes, he was.
Yeah,
like,
see,
they
because
would
when
say-
I was like 10 years old, I was angry about the fact that back in the 1800s, people made those arguments, and I was like wanting to go back in time to tell people. In the
See,
1800s.
but like that's what people don't realize. They think all this stuff sounds like old, but there's so much of it like modern day.
But it just blows my mind that like that particular thing is still taught. Anyway, sorry, continue.
But I didn't think too much about it. I kind of just thought everyone was like equal now and everything. So anyway, it took me a long time to like realize a lot of this stuff, and even just a lot of like white people in general are just learning so much stuff nowadays with more movement and education around like Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. But whenever the Black Lives Matter thing was happening, I had a really hard time understanding what was going on and why people were mad, because I kind of thought everything was like, I understood more because I understood about like segregation and I had learned those things, but I still sort of thought everything was equal now. Like I just didn't really understand. So I had a really hard time facing that. And then when I finally started letting go and like learning, I realized that why I had so much resistance to learning about like Black Lives Matter and Black issues for so long was the similar thing where I didn't want to go look into it. I didn't want to go see how horrible things were. I didn't almost believe it could happen. Like it sounded like this isn't happening now. Like I look around it and I see I'm in this city where it seems like, you know, progressive and all this things, it seems safe, it seems whatever. Like I can't believe that all of these like the hate crimes and stuff are still happening. I can't believe that only, you know, like I was reading history and I couldn't believe so much of it. Just like, oh, like the documentary glorifying the KKK in the, what was it? I think it was like the 40s or something, was premiered in the White House. And like the president thought it was great. Like when I heard that, I was like, what? Like I didn't want to believe it. And you also couldn't like, you're like, that doesn't sound possible. How could that many people be horrible? And so you almost just your brain just wants to dismiss it because you're like, that just doesn't sound possible. So anyway, I guess I use that to kind of parallel. I'm like kind of seeing how people just don't want to believe that this stuff could be going on, you know, and they also probably just think like that's not possible. If they've sort of been in a community where they were held accountable not to treat their kids like that for their whole life, and then it doesn't seem possible that people would do that, you know.
That's a really interesting comparison. That's a good point. Yeah. We want to resist like thinking about things that are uncomfortable. I think that's a common thing. Yeah, I can think of other examples, but I won't. That would change the subject. But yeah, there are a lot of examples of that with like social issues where people just kind of like, get tense up and they don't want to think about it. And it's like, because that's going to change the way you see the world.
Yeah, people don't want to be wrong either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
apparently. Like the thing is, if you open yourself up to exploring new things, there's always that possibility that you're gonna be wrong, which is terrifying, I think, especially for religious fundamentalists who are very, this is the truth, and this is the only truth, and this is right. So there's no reason to think about anything else.
So I have a real quick thing. Is like, are there things that you guys are kind of doing in your lives or are thinking about doing that impact this stuff in any way, as far as like creating community or resources or filling any of these holes, or just like, besides just creating resources like in crisis situations, like creating community and stuff for people who are trying to reconstruct after deconstruction kind of stuff? Have y'all thought much about like how we can actually create that in our day-to-day lives, or be a part of that anyway?
I actually have to dip out. I need to eat, and it's getting late for me.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I've
You're
enjoyed
like
this
eating
very
food.
much.
That's the first step.
I've enjoyed this very much. I'll
Thank
see
you so
again.
much for coming and chatting.
Thank you.
Yeah, but
But yeah, I wondered if y'all had thought much about
Um,
that.
I know for me, like in my personal life, I've tried to be that, like, I've tried to find some community with people coming out of that. Just people that I knew who grew up in the same environment that I grew up in, and just being on the outside when they come out. So that's, in some way, that's kind of happened naturally, if that makes sense, like finding these little groups, because I think the groups that a lot of us grew up in tend to be super insular. So when you do get out, it's like, you know who the person who got out is, you know? So I think part of that happens naturally. But I think there are a lot of deconstruction groups that I'm in, just like online or whatever. I don't know. I don't know if you guys have found the same.
I had a hard time being in it, being in deconstruction groups, because I don't remember why. I think there was I very quickly needed to like reconstruct, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
I very quickly needed, I felt the void, and I was like, what do I fill it with? And so you know, I very quickly had to actually try to find you know, like therapy, and then like I had to seek like communities of light, because I needed to rebuild something, you know. So I was looking for, I joined like yeah, I joined like the queer community stuff like that, or like therapy, and like I had to kind of piece together like a little bit of like Wicca or witchcraft over here, a little bit of like therapy over here, trying to find like some goodness or some light, and look at the Eastern mythology, Eastern mysticism and stuff. But trying to find, because I needed that it was hard for me to just like sit with the other people who were going through the same things I was going through, you know?
Yeah.
So that was difficult for me. I kind of want, and then I kind of want to like, I'm going to school for psychology, and I kind of want to use that to create like a resource center for people who, not just people in our situation or our types of situations, but anyone who, for whatever reason, is displaced from normal religion or community, where you can go and like have a community center, essentially, where you can go and get resources and information about basic things like taxes and banks and cars and stuff like that. But you can also maybe like see a therapist, you know, get access to healthcare, but also have things there like a little garden and like a little, you know, support group that goes on or whatever, but that you can go in person and just like hang out, and more like things that are light, like, and healing, like you have gardening or nature therapy, and you have like movement therapy, like dance stuff or things. People can then go take the food, like cook and serve and have a meal. So I want to be part of creating a space like that for people, because sometimes all people need is just a place to show up and see the same people all the time, and, you know, eat or be in nature. You know, hear a kind word or something like that, before they can even start to try to go to therapy or get a house or whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to be a part of creating. It probably are. I'm also trying to see what else is already out there like that. But I'd like mine to be somehow more accessible to the groups we're talking about, like have specific outreach where we can like try to reach the specific demographic and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Really cool.
I think there's a general lack of anything physical like that. The only thing that I found is like not it's not tangible. Like it's usually online or it's through word of mouth. There's not really a physical place. So I think that aspect of that is especially really cool.
Yeah, I like that idea. Like that's a really good idea. Cause like I think I'm still at the point of like, I mean, I said I'm still working on my deconstruction and I've started doing a little bit of reconstruction, but I'm in this kind of weird limbo because basically what happened is I started doing it while I was in college and then I went, I don't have enough brain power for that, and then put my my faith crisis on the back burner for like 2 years.
A mood.
I was just like, we're gonna deal with that later.
For sure.
But like now that I've graduated and stuff, now I'm confronted with the it needs to move. It's moved to the front burner now and needs to be taken care of before I burn the whole house down with me inside of it. But it's shit. Hold on, I'll find it. I'll find the train of thought again. But yeah, it's because like it's hard to do it, you know, like on your own, because like I don't really have a support system necessarily for like I have a support system, but like I don't necessarily specifically have a like these are people that I'm gonna go like outside of this group now, which is awesome. Where it's like, I'm going to go talk to these people specifically about these weird niche experiences and we're going to deconstruct all of that.
Yeah.
And like, I'm in therapy, which is really good. Everybody should go to therapy. Like, that's just a personal belief of mine. Everybody should go to therapy at least one time in their life. But so it's like the idea, because it is like, yeah, there isn't anything that exists like that. There's not even really like chat forums or anything. Like it's really hard to find that kind of community anywhere with that kind of like understanding. Because even if you find it online, there's still the terror of like, you know, there's a very different type of being known between talking to people and actually talking to people.
Yeah.
So like I don't know where I was going with this. I think that's a really cool idea, and I think the world needs more of it, and I really like it because like as I've been working on this, like I decided the thing that I want to be able to do eventually is just like have the house that people can come to. Like you need a house? I've got a house. Like, let me know. I'll set an extra plate. You want me to come grab you? Cool. Pack your bag. Let's fucking go.
Yeah.
Type of like the, you know, the revolving door of this is a safe space for you to be and to exist and for as long as you need to. And so like, it's just cool because I don't usually, you know, that's just like I say that to people and they don't understand what I mean.
Yeah.
Because they go, what do you mean? Like just people don't have a, like, why would people need that? And I'm like, you have no idea. So it's cool. And I think that is, I don't know how we make that kind of thing a reality, but like, I definitely think that would be beneficial to the general universe to have an actual physical place like that.
Yeah, and I can't take all the credit because I pretty much stole it from a place I volunteer, which is called Out Youth in Austin. And if any of you guys come to Austin, or I don't know, everybody should know about it. But it's a little house that is a drop-in center for LGBT kids after school. And it is similar, but just for kids. Like my thing was like for adults and for not just LGBT people, but like their thing is so cool because it's a little house and it's very non-assuming looking. And it's specifically, what shocked me the first time I volunteered with it, because they're a registered nonprofit, all this stuff, they get all these grants and all the things. But if the kids come in after school with the parents, they have a lobby that's very like non-LGBT, and the kids will like say that something else, it's something else. I'll say like, I'm just going to this like drop in like thing, see my friends, and the like people will not tell the parents what it is.
That's
and
cool.
the kids will come there and then they're not allowed, they will like not talk to the parent. And I was like, how is that allowed? And they're like, I don't know, but we're making it work and we're not backing down. And like, because they know that kids who are not out like need a safe place to go. So they'll literally just like, this was just somebody's house at one point, and they eventually made it into this like little space. We've got all the nonprofit stuff going, and so it's this little like safe haven for these kids. And they have like therapists on staff. They have 2, I think usually at least one a night, who's on staff. So if a kid needs a minute, they can register for like free therapy there and do the intake form and everything. They do have to get their parents' permission to go to therapy, to sign the thing to start therapy, but they still don't have to tell them it's like where they met them at the LGBT center or anything. But even if they can't get their parents' consent and they can't get their parents' signature on the therapy form to start therapy, they can still go to the drop-in and get like a 15-minute like check-in with a therapist there.
That's really cool.
Somehow there's like a thing there. So there's technically just therapists there at all times that a kid can go and like check in with if they need to.
Man, I wish I had had that as a kid.
Isn't that amazing? It's like,
That's
I was
so
like,
cool.
every night that I was just volunteering, which I was pretty much just watching kids and making sure they weren't like doing anything inappropriate. They were like, because it was preteens, but like I was pretty much just standing there,
Hormones.
but still and being in a place where they can be out for the first time. But I was just like mind blown constantly. I was like, how is this real? This is impossible. Like, how is this real? Like, but there, it's very rare type of thing. They're like, I wish there was more stuff like that all over, because the kids just like thrive. They'll go from like a little shy, like, like I can't thing, to being like super confident. Like, it's just so amazing.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that would have done for me as a
Right?
teenager.
Yeah.
Like hot, like shit, man. Even if just for having the therapy, like,
Yeah.
because my mom wouldn't let me go, like originally, like it's a whole thing. We don't need to get into it, but so it's just that's really, really cool.
Yeah, more places like that. For sure. And physical places, I think. Because I don't know, maybe this was just me, but like I found the internet very anxiety inducing. Of course, I hadn't been on it my whole life, but I was like, I'm scared to talk to this person. I don't know, it was very like anxiety inducing. But when I talk to people in person, I'm like, this is not scary at all. So I don't know, maybe it's a
You gotta wonder, like, part of that internet might be that also just our generation was the everybody online is a pedophile out to get you.
Yeah.
Like,
that's true.
That was a whole thing.
Oh yeah.
For like 10 years there.
Yeah. Also, I think for me, just like not seeing people's faces. I'm sorry, you go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, not seeing people's faces and being in person just makes me harder for me personally to read. But anyway, that's all.
Yeah, I feel you. I definitely feel you there. It took me a long time to actually enter any sort of forms, and I definitely had to like know someone first who was in the form for me to be like, okay, this seems okay. But I think I relate to you a lot in just getting out of that, feeling the need to have something else. Because when I left, like I lost like pretty much everything. Like you lose your faith, you lose your whole community. I mean, you lose your family, like all the people, all the stability that you have just disappears suddenly. Even if it wasn't really stability in the moment, but like any constant is suddenly gone and it's taken from you. And you're like, where do I go now? Who even am I? Because I based my internal perception of myself based on the perceptions that people had of me, right? So I think definitely entering a space where people are allowing you to process those things and helping you, just kind of giving you some sort of constant, kind of like what you were saying about the home that you work at. Even just being there and seeing people, I think is super important in giving people like this, people who are deconstructing this, like, okay, I have something to wake up and do, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that made any sense. I'm like,
Oh, no, completely. Yeah. It's cool
Yeah.
to hear that it resonates with someone because I mean, it's just in my head right now.
yeah. I think that's really cool. I think that's definitely something that would be super helpful and is really needed.
I don't think I asked at the beginning of the call, like, where are y'all located? Because I'm in Texas right now, in Austin.
I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
I'm in Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Bethany, Oklahoma.
Oh, you're on mute, Quinn? No, we can't hear you. At least I can't hear you. Can anyone else?
Yeah. Quinn.
It's not working.
No.
Oh, wait, I can hear a little something.
Does it work if I take my headphones out?
Yeah, I can hear something now. Yeah, yeah.
These are really old, and so is my computer.
Yeah.
Like, those are the headphones I bought with this computer in early 2015. So,
Mm.
I would say I'm on the Missouri side of Kansas City, but like barely.
Oh, Kansas.
Like 5 minutes to get over there. I'm trying to move back to Kansas side. But gotta wait for my lease to be up.
Mm.
Missouri is that's a state right there.
There is.
That's a lot of things in Missouri. I recently told my girlfriend I never want to set foot in Missouri ever again in my adult life. And she was like, okay. I was like, yeah.
I've definitely thought I was gonna get hate crimed a few times. It happened more often in when I was going to school because I went to K-State. So semi-rural Kansas.
Oof.
Looking like this.
Well, go you for being you there. I couldn't.
Like, whoo. There was the time, like, oh man, when the election came out, there was a whole group of like Trump supporting students on the corner, and I was that close to just pulling over and be like, you do know you're advocating for me to be like thrown into a concentration camp, right?
Yeah.
Like, are you aware of that? It's wild.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting that we have people all spotted all over because I'm like, aha, so we all have different places where we can secretly start the gay agenda, not the gay agenda, taking over the world. No.
I am the gay agenda.
It's my gender. I identify as the gay agenda. No.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I think it's cool that we're kind of spread out in that way. I mean, it's obviously concerning initially because like when you're starting out, you're like, where's my community? We're all like spread out. But I do think it's cool in the way where we can take these kind of ideas of how to, help others and how to create community and all that stuff into our own little corners of the US of A.
Yeah.
We just buy an entire state and then make our own country.
I heard
The
that
US of
mentioned.
gay.
It's just us gay. It's not doesn't stand for anything.
But only if it's gay.
I remember one time I was literally like, why don't we just buy an island and put everyone on there and they're gay? And they're like, but like, how do we repopulate? I'm like, oh shit.
Okay, why do we need to repopulate?
Hey, yeah, there you go.
Just have all the gay sex. It's great.
Yeah, and
It's
then
good.
it's just like that picture. Was that the island of delights, or Bosch's yellow
Yeah,
the
yeah.
painting, like Bosch's island of delights or whatever. That's what it would be.
Women.
Is that the
But-
one that I think I saw that in speaking of horror movies where people eat their families?
Mhm.
Are you sure? Are you sure you're kind of doing okay there, Braden? You've got a
No, not
vibe
at
going.
all.
That's a little
He's
concerning.
like, I never said I was doing okay. Did I ever say that?
I'm like,
That
I'm
was-
not judging.
That was
But
not
I'm
a
judging just a
qualifier.
little.
No, there was a movie I saw called The Last Thing That Sarah Saw, I think was the name of the movie. And it was about like a Puritan, basically like cult family in the 1800s where just bad shit happened. And I think it mentioned the Island of Delights or something like that. There was like a book of like gay poetry or something. That
Oh
was,
yeah. So yeah, he was a painter. I want to say he was back in the. I gotta just see in chat. I want to say he was like back in the 1600s or something like that.
I was gonna say 16 sounds right.
Yeah, and his art is very ahead of the time. It doesn't look like 1600s art. It looks just like very abstract and weird in a non-1600s way. But the only way that people would get commissioned to make paintings back then, big paintings, was if they're making them for a church. So one thing they were painting a lot was like I forget what they're called, the altar screens. I'm not saying it right. I should know because I went to art history. But anyway, they'd have like the altar like screens or whatever. It's like a 3-paneled altar piece that they would get paid a lot to paint. So a lot of painters who were not necessarily religious, or that you just kind of had to be to like make money, and you had to make art for churches. So I want to say it's Bosch. I might be pronouncing it wrong, but this guy who painted this abstract way painted this 3-paneled thing, and he painted it. It's kind of like, I guess, the Hays Code for movies. You showed something abhorrent or immoral, it had to be like shown to be bad. If you wanted to paint something that was like Christians thought was bad, it had to be shown in the painting that they were getting punished for that that kind of thing. So
look, this immoral person is dying. Right
yes, so we can show it. Whatever.
I mean, if I'm gonna go having gay sex, then that's how I go, man.
You have to do it.
I'm okay with that.
So he made like a little screen where the beginning was like the creation of the world. It was Adam and Eve, and then the end, I guess, was supposed to be like hell. And it's weird because it's very like steampunky in a way, even though of course it wasn't, because it was before like steampunk would have been a thing. But like it's very weird and kind of creative and horrible, with like people being tortured and stuff, but like in a kind of weird and innovative way. But the middle panel was all of in between the Garden of Eden and the end of the world, where all of humanity was indulging in their sinful lusts. And so a lot of people think he just painted the panel because he really just wanted to paint the middle piece, but he had to make it like a moral thing. I'm like, they're all gonna get punished. So yeah, there was like people and flowers, and but there was a lot of really cool stuff, a lot of like interracial stuff, which is cool. It was like very neat. It's beautiful. A lot of people love it, but anyway, that's off.
Oh, yeah.
This is how we would construct our society. But yeah, I don't know. That's the only. I've been trying like host spiritual like events in my house also to try to get people together. But even the word spiritual like turns off some people, and spiritualities are so diverse that I have a hard time. I feel like making a unified community around it. And there are actually spiritual spaces I've been in that do a good job of it. Like, I guess some people call it like New Age. They don't necessarily identify themselves that way, but I have been to a spiritual church that wasn't like a church at all that I really liked, where maybe they were more focused on the Eastern side of things. But you would go and like they'd have like cushions and sit in a circle. They'd have like an altar that had like all kinds of stuff on it, like a little like items and symbols and stones or whatever. But people would just put whatever, so it was like not only one god or deity or anything. And then people would sit around in a circle, and one of them, they would have like, you could share whatever you were going through, and they would and just the space and the way that they welcomed it in was like a good place for people. You kind of say it was like a support group, but it was more just like, I don't know, it was in a spiritual space, so I guess it made it slightly different. And they had another space where they were just, people could talk about spiritual experiences, and they could talk about like what they were experiencing. And it was more like, I guess, shared group, since everyone was sitting in a circle. It was very like, everyone felt really even. Like there was a sort of a facilitator, but it was kind of just like everybody was equal. And they would have like other events to honor like the solstice or the equinox or something, which could be considered like pagan, but really you go there and some people would have like a tea ceremony and some people would be facilitating like ecstatic dance or whatever. So this was a very like equal, it felt to me like a very good way for lots of different people to come together and experience different things. But what frustrated me with that kind of space, I think this may be a problem like new agey stuff, is that it started getting to the point where they started charging, like, or they had donation boxes at the beginning of the door, but then they started doing like a required donation of a certain amount, and that kind of kept increasing. And as they got bigger, because it started out just like in someone's house, they were kind of like, okay, now we have membership, and it's like ridiculously unaffordable. Like,
Oh, no.
I guess like only like really like bougie people can go do that now. And a lot of that happens with like energy healings and stuff, which I'm really interested in and think are really powerful and necessary. But like a lot of, you try to see an energy healer or something, they're like the like paywall is like huge. So it's like that frustrates me. And I'm like, that's the only place I've seen so far where I've seen, not that space, but a lot of spaces like that where it's actually really, really healing, a great space. And it seems to bring lots of people together. But then they have, I guess because they can't do it for free. I don't know, but they end up like getting to this place where they're the paywall, and like, I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
So, I don't overcome that.
It's like the white person new age.
Yes,
like-
exactly. And that frustrated me because I started noticing, I was like, wait a second. Once the BLM stuff started happening, I was like, there are not a lot of people of color here. I don't know how to talk to them about this because, like, you know, I was like, yeah, but, and eventually not, and they're all, and they would say like we want to be inclusive and stuff because they were, but I was like, but you don't understand what that means though. Like,
Yeah.
like you're not racist, you're not like outright, you know, racist, but you're not anti-racist.
White people
Yeah.
version of inclusive,
Yeah.
which is absolutely a thing.
Sure.
Where it's like you say it, but you don't put in any actual work into making or facilitating diversity. So it just ends up being white centric because white people don't know how to make it not about them.
Another a really good thing I learned from Out Youth, which is that LGBT space, is that they brought some people in to kind of talk about making sure that you're being respect, like being anti-racist, I guess, essentially. They brought some people in to kind of talk about that, and they were really good about it because all the people in the room, that it's a very diverse group of kids, and they were kind of like, we want to talk about these experiences. We want to invite you to join in with your experiences if you want to. And they were like, our top rule is, if this what we're talking about does not apply to you, like it's not your experience, then don't speak to it unless it's your experience or unless no one else in the room wants to speak. And they said, and just because no one else in the room is immediately speaking or speaks very quickly in response to these topics doesn't mean that nobody else has something to say. They're basically like, a lot of systems and situations have made people of color less likely to want to or feel welcome to participate in these conversations. So just because someone doesn't jump to answer doesn't mean it's your turn to answer. You know, like if you don't experience these things, probably don't say anything. If unless no one else is saying anything, and even then probably don't say anything. Probably just don't say anything. Just don't say anything. Just don't say anything. And they're like, just listen. You know, and then it was interesting even just like to watch the kids because I started notes because I was like, oh, I didn't even notice this because again, I could be like kind of colorblind and like I'm realizing it's like kind of a bad thing because you can end up not noticing problems like that. I started noticing that they would ask a question and a lot of the kids, it started to be this point where there were these like two like white kids that would be like, wait for a couple seconds and then be like, okay, but like, and like start talking. And then the facilitator would try to like want them to feel like they could be heard, but then be like, hey, just wondering, like, let's try to give some other people some space. Like they weren't trying to like directly call it out, but like it just kept happening. And I was like, oh, this is the whole world. This is just like hyper aware. It's hyper obvious in like the small group of teenagers, but who are really great people, and they just like don't know realize what they're doing. But anyway, it's hard. I don't really have any other topics. I mean, I have other topics, but I don't really have any other topics of conversation to kind of talk about further with like deconstruction or reconstruction type of stuff. So I guess if any of you guys had any last notes to say on what has helped you in your, reconstruction journey or anything, feel free. But if not, or either way, I'm so grateful for everybody for joining tonight, and it felt really nice to talk about things that like I haven't been able to relate to a lot of people on in a while and kind of brainstorm a little bit.
So thank you for facilitating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like really very therapeutic.
Yay. That's wonderful.
I kind of forgot this was happening, and then this is like a weirdly low day for me, but it's been nice. It's been nice to hear from you guys, and like kind of just relating with folks who are also like went through the same shit.
Soon we'll have the little houses where we can also just go when we're not having a great day.
If we have at least one in every state, then that's like a perfect road trip.
Yes.
Yeah, just lining up all the dots.
Connect the dots.
We can do them in the shape of a pentagram to scare away.
That would be so good. Just the conspiracy theorists eat it up.
We've hit that point of the night where I don't have a filter anymore. It's just a lot of bad dad jokes now.
Well, yeah, thank y'all.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna post does anyone, I'll ask also in the chat before I do, but if, does anybody have any opposition to me posting this video just in the chat that we were chatting in
Go
for
for
people that didn't make it?
No.
No worries.
And then if anyone wants to listen in, or if you want to have another one another time, could be fun.
I would definitely be open to doing this again.
I would be down.
Same.
Super cool. Well, I appreciate y'all. And again, I also appreciate, I can already hear just from like a little bits of what y'all have said, you either already do, have done, or want to do, like that you're making your corners of the world better already. So I appreciate that too, because it's not always easy. And you're working on yourself and working on making your life better, and all that is also part of that. So thank you for doing that.
It's
You guys will have I have to go at this point because I have to get up early in the morning, but thank you again.
It's bedtime.
It's bedtime. Time for sleep. And have a great night, and I'll see y'all around.
Yeah.
y'all.
See ya.
See ya.